Hey horror fans, happy October once again, and on this video I'm going to be reviewing Road Games, which is a Frightfest film from 2015, and it's quite an interesting little twist on the road horror movie with sort of a nihilistic type thriller B-movie feel to it. So it's set in France, and there's like this British sort of backpacker called Jack, who at the beginning is trying to hitchhike his way back home, and he basically saves this French girl Veronica, who's being abused by a guy in a car. He comes to her rescue, and then they sort of form like a bond, an attachment, a potential relationship, and they then start to hitchhike together. They end up getting picked up by this sort of quite creepy, weird sort of French guy who says because the fairies are like closed for that night, they can go and stay at his house. He introduces them to his wife, Mary, played by Barbara Crampton, and that becomes like the kind of premise and the suspense. What's going on with this weird couple? Can they be trusted? And at the same time, there's this sort of myth of like what is known as a road killer. So he or she is on the loose, and he has been killing people locally on who he's picked up on the road. So you've got all that going on in the background to this, and it's a solid enough watch. As I said, it's quite an interesting little twist on an old sort of formula. It's sort of very watchable, quite enjoyable, with some like genre tropes which are nicely played. There's some good character stuff. What I liked about the premise at the start of the film is this sort of idea that it plays on this sort of thing that you can't really trust anyone, or who do you trust, because obviously Jack is this backpacker, and I think even for like the opening bit of the film, it maybe hints that he can't sort of be trusted, because you don't really know any of these characters at the start, and then obviously he sort of comes across Veronica, this beautiful French girl. He's coming out of a relationship, and they sort of have this spark, and she kind of is starting to seduce him. But so I think it plays on this idea, then can she be trusted? Who is she exactly? So with the killer out there, I think it's kind of ambiguous over who these characters are and if they can be trusted. And then obviously you add in this element of this weird sort of, well, Barbara Crampton is playing like an American, but this weird sort of couple, and they sort of take them in, they go to their house. And so I did like the sort of suspense of that and the mystery. And the other thing the film sort of does is this idea of like this Brit being like lost in a foreign country, because even though Veronica speaks English, and at times she speaks English to Jack, she also talks in French a lot of the time, and he can't really understand French. And that sort of happens with like the French guy as well, who picks them up. He talks in French at times, and it just becomes this kind of like metaphor for Jack being lost in this foreign country. And it actually plays into the twist quite nicely, the fact that he can't understand what they're saying, and it just sort of adds like another layer to it. And it's solid entertainment. As I said, I think Barbara Crampton is nicely cast. She sort of has this bewitching sort of quirky sort of feel to her, this obviously manic energy that she tends to bring. Although she's not best used, I think they could have got more out of her. I did enjoy her husband. I've seen that actor in something else, but he was a lot of good fun. He had some good lines, like a nice line about a bit of Home Improvement when Jack asks him what he's doing with the hammer, sort of thing. And there's some fun stuff with him where he's kind of being a little bit creepy, a little bit like intrusive. He asks straight away when he picks Jack up, "Hey, is that your girlfriend?" talking about Veronica. So sort of at the house, and when you've got this sort of weird, sort of odd couple, that's maybe when the film is strongest. I think on the downside, Jack, the actor playing Jack, is like really wooden. He's really bad. A lot of stilted style dialogue, and then when you get to the end of the film and things are like unraveling, he sort of goes to the other extreme where he's like really overacting and just becomes a very annoying sort of character. So I never really cared about Jack, and that was a bit of a problem. There are one or two corny lines of dialogue, but the rest of the cast are like solid enough. I thought the girl playing Veronica was pretty decent as well, and I think the thing is it drags a bit in the middle, and it's never quite as edgy or nihilistic as it should be. I think it hints it could become that, but it does drag a bit in the middle and maybe lost a bit of momentum because of that. But it actually ends quite strongly. There's quite a nice sort of, series of events towards the end that like liven things up, and some decent sort of action moments. I actually guessed the twist of the movie. I sort of saw that coming, but it's actually not a bad twist. I sort of quite enjoyed it, and it ended quite strongly. It is mostly the stuff with Jack and him as a character, also the actor, that kind of drags it down, because when you've got this sort of romance with him and Veronica, that kind of didn't really compel me or do that much. And I think maybe the film could have went a bit further with its horror premise, but overall not a bad watch, solid enough, worth checking out anyway. There's certainly some B-movie thrills in there for you. So that's Road Games, and I'll be back with another horror movie review tomorrow. Thanks for listening, and goodbye. Oh, I give it a 6 out of 10, by the way. Almost forgot. I'll see you guys tomorrow.